Pleased to be joined at this time by three of my friends and three guys that have all worked with me and three guys who all specialize in strength conditioning. And I'm fortunate enough to have gotten them all here at the same time and hopefully won't tell too many bad stories about me. We got Coach Matt Ely, currently at Mount Paran and running the defense and weight room. Coach Adam Wharton at Gilmer High School, currently running the defense and the weight room. And Coach Grant Myers at Pickens High in Georgia. Currently running the defense in the weight room. So what's the deal with the defense weight room guys? People on offense don't care about the weight room?
I think coincidence.
Yeah, I think y'all spend too much time up on the whiteboard with the expo marker trying to be last man with the pen. We're just trying to get these kids in line and get tougher, physical, all that good stuff.
I just thought maybe since all of y'all worked with me, you just figured you had no chance on offense, so you had to go to that other side. Isn't that right, Ely? Ely coached some offense with me. Wharton did too.
That first year, then I got relegated to the defense. Been there the last 11 years.
Yeah.
I got a good dose of both sides.
Yeah, you did too. Well, guys, genuinely, I'm glad to have you. I invited you here because I wanted to do something on strength conditioning to put out there. I think it's the most important aspect to everything we're doing, and I'm not as knowledgeable as some people. I'm of average knowledge probably in the coaching world on this. So I really just want to kind of moderate, ask you guys some questions, see what y'all do, and hopefully start a good discussion on this that we can build and provide some resources for people. I can vouch for all three of you guys personally as friends, as good people, but also care about the kids and care about all sports. So we can kind of get all that out of the way. Like we're training everybody. And this, hopefully what we're about to talk about for the next 30, 45 minutes will all be applicable for all sports. It doesn't matter if you're boys or girls or in Michigan or wherever else. All right. So first, and I'll just kind of go around. I'll just kind of pick one of you and then go to the next one. So what are you all trying to accomplish in strength conditioning? What's the philosophy of what you're trying to do? Coach Myers, you go first.
All right, well, I guess the biggest thing is, one, we want to develop physical and mental strength and toughness. That's the first thing. Then we want to get the kids stronger. We want them to grow, to have an appreciation of the weight room, and then also keep them healthy so that they can be on the field, the court, the grass, whatever it may be. Foundation that's built off the Olympic lifts there for me personally. And then I guess my philosophy that I've really adopted since I got to Pickens also has been, I want to be the last coach on the bench. So I'm an extension of everybody's coaching staff. So I need to be, in line with what the baseball coach's philosophy is, with girls basketball coach's philosophy. And, I've had outstanding buy-in and support from those guys up there. So I think that's one thing that I've really developed in the last year and a half that's been beneficial for me.
Well, let me ask you the second question. We'll just go around with both questions. So who are some of the people that influenced you to have this philosophy? You can tell a little bit about yourself. We kind of skipped that part where you introduce yourself. I did it for you. So tell a little bit about your influences and how you got to that philosophy.
Played college football at Shorter, had a really good strength coach there who also happened to be our track coach. So that was where I first started seeing some of that, crossover sport right there as far as having to be, on the same page, different coaching staffs. He also did an outstanding job teaching the Olympics, and that's where I really learned a lot of the technical aspect of it and trying to train myself to have a coaching eye. Then as I got more and more into the strength and conditioning world from high school level, some guys that I really admire and appreciate, my close circle right there, TCJ, the head coach at Washington Wilkes, Mo Delatif, defensive coordinator and strength coach at Kennesaw Mountain, and then Jake Kelly, who's the head coach at Cherokee High School in Alabama, as well as Jay Floyd, I think, does an awesome job at Jones County. Tim Bragg and CJ Stockel at Raven have done an outstanding job there. Ronnie Jankovic at Etowah, Tobias Jacoby at Strong Rock Christian, Aaron Hill, Grayson, and then these two guys right here who I've met, through different avenues of, the coaching world right there. Adam and I have been collaborating on some stuff since we got out for social distancing. I met Matt through Mo several years back, and he's been another guy that I really just admire what he's done from afar.
Grant must either be looking for a job or accepting an award. He didn't thank everybody.
That an acceptance speech right there?
I appreciate it, bud. Coach Wharton, you're next. Tell us a little bit about your philosophy on what you do in general terms, and then kind of who influenced that philosophy or how you got to that point.
My philosophy falls in line with a lot of things that Grant already touched on. One, our stuff's Olympic based with cleans and snatches. But, I believe that we want to go out there like everybody does. You want to try to put out the strongest and most athletic product versus what you have. And I'm coming from a situation where it's not apples to apples with the types of athletes we got versus who we're playing. Very similar to Pickens. Quality type of athletes, probably a little higher at Pickens than it is at Gilmer. But the other thing, we want to be able to increase our performance on the field and on the court, and we got to do that through the weight room and also reduce the risk of injury. I think those two things go to the top. And next, I want to be able to create an atmosphere, that athletes want to be in the weight room, enjoy being in there, that they embrace that it is a daily grind and a weekly grind. Just because you had a good day or a good week last week doesn't matter going into this week. There's a lot of factors that affect, how well of a day or how well your performance is going to be in the weight room, just like it does on the field. But we also want our athletes to know that winning games starts in the weight room. That if you're in a day and an age now, it's not like it was 25 years ago when I was in high school that, you show up on August the 1st and there you go, that, if you're not training, you're not giving yourself the best chance to win because everybody's doing it.
Right.
And you've just got to do the best job you can to maximize the time that you got with your players versus what the guy down the road's doing. And that's something me and Grant have actually talked about that too, that, everybody's training. What are you doing with the time that you got?
Absolutely. Coach Ely.
Yes, sir.
Same question.
So, I got my start with you way back in 2008 and kind of just picked me up off the street, and I kind of got indoctrinated into coaching through you, but it's got me to where I'm at today. So you did a pretty good job. But my kind of philosophy behind the weight room is, there's the getting kids stronger, getting them in shape, getting them faster. There's all those aspects to it. But the longer I'm in this deal and the more I kind of dig into it is, I think the weight room and then strength conditioning in general is probably one of the best fields to build a culture in terms of not just on a specific team, but in terms of your entire athletic department, is to build the culture that you want for how your teams compete. And, I think culture is one of the most tossed around, abused buzzwords in the world today. But in terms of truly building and indoctrinating a culture, there's no better place to do it than the weight room. And where that really kind of started my gears turning on that was you probably don't even remember this, Chris, but we were having a staff meeting, and I think we're having some issues like this coach was coaching these other guys and all. And I remember you said that the only guy on the staff that really should be talking to everybody on the team was me, because I was the strength coach and I trained all of them. And that really was kind of a light bulb for me of, if you're in the weight room, there is no, these are my guys, these are his guys, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So you really are kind of just intertwined with everybody. And that's really where you start to develop that culture of whatever team you're training or whatever school you're at or athletic program. So my philosophy is more of, the X's and O's of strength conditioning, how to get guys bigger, faster, stronger, keep them healthy. Those are just kind of the job descriptions, but my philosophy would be, what am I doing day in and day out with the kids that I'm blessed to train? How are we building the culture that we want and that we need to be successful across all athletics?
Yeah, I agree. And I'm sure whatever I said back then, it was golden and very impressive. But this is the only slide I can probably contribute to at the level of you guys. And it's building, my job was to help build the strength program, not to run it, or micromanage it. And all three of you guys did different things to help run that. And I think it's important that you have somebody there that's a hard worker, that cares, that gets after it. My personal opinion, I don't think there's some magical lifts that are better than others or some magical plan that's better than others. I think, just like offenses and defenses, they all kind of work. It's really about, are you for real getting after? Are you for real getting a culture? Are you for real? Do you for real care about the kids? Can you maximize their potential? Because just like anything else, guys, it's not about training the best kid. It's actually about training the average kids and making them better than average, and the below average ones and making them average. Those are the ways you're going to win. Pretty much anybody. My wife coached some of these guys, or train them, and they get strong. It's really about how are you doing with the average kid, and all you guys done a great job with that. And that's why I thought that was a good question to start with. This will get more into the specifics of it. In studying this for years and talking to people, kind of came up with these 6 fundamental groups that most everything falls into. Some people might word them a little differently or whatever. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat, strength conditioning, I've learned. But what do you guys do? And we'll just go quick. We'll go reverse order this time. Ely, you're up first. What do you guys do to build your strength in your program? What's some of the key thing that comes to mind when I say, what are we doing to build strength?
In terms of just strength, I think that's where a lot of the new stuff in strength conditioning is really missing the boat. So many people now are big into the velocity-based training and all that stuff. And we do that stuff. We have gym awares, and we put guys on the gym awares to, measure their peak velocity, peak power, that kind of stuff. But I think especially in high school, kind of the foundation is strength, as in just absolute strength in terms of how much of an external load you can move relative to your body weight. And we do that very, very simplistically. We go about just our sets and our reps in terms of percentage-based stuff. And we train heavy, and we train heavy often. I mean, even during the season. I mean, we'll work all the way up to 90% at times during a football season. We stay about that 80-85% range on our strength work year round. And, one of the things that really gets misconstrued when you're talking about training different athletes is if I make a kid do, let's say I make a kid do a set of 10 at 65% versus making him do a set of 2 at 85%. Well, that set of 10 at that lower percentage is going to make him a lot more sore than that set of 2 at 85%. So I think strength in terms of how you develop it is with your main lifts, whatever you base your program off of, but your main lifts, you've got to train at those heavy kind of upper threshold intensities often. So in order to maintain that strength and develop it in the long run.
Absolutely. Coach Wharton, you got anything to add to that?
Oh, I think Matt touched on so much of that stuff. I mean, one of the things I see a lot, especially Twitter's so bad about this. And right now too, with the social distancing, you're seeing a lot of guys are trying to put so much out there of what they know versus I think a lot of stuff's missed out on the basics. If you got a kid that can't squat very well, why are you trying to do something else on a single leg, a unilateral type movement, which is great. But if a kid doesn't have a foundation of strength, in my opinion, you're getting this kid messed up from the get-go. I think it like football, a lot of ways, it's blocking and tackling. That's your base to that game. And so if you can't build a foundation with strength, a foundation with a deadlift or a power clean, you know, all the fancy stuff and the fancy equipment is basically useless. So, you know, something else he touched on is training at that heavy weight year round is got to be a big staple. One of the things that always frustrated me dealing with some people over the years is you know, sometimes you got guys coming to your team, they telling you they want you to train their guys, you know, low weight, a lot of reps. And like Matt said, it's, you know, that kid's going to be a whole lot more sore for longer. You get a kid coming there doing sets of 10 at that 60%, he may be sore for the whole week. And then that coach is coming to you saying like, hey man, what are y'all doing to these kids? Versus a guy going in there doing 2 or 3 reps, and then not only top of the strength, you're also getting that power aspect of it too, you know? So, that's where I'm at. And I always feel like too, even when I was working with you and more so this past year, this last fall at Gilmer, you know, maintaining that steady increase of trying to get up to that 90-95% peak by the end of the season. I always felt pretty good strength wise of where our guys were at near the tail end of the season, you know, or getting closer to that Christmas break time when basketball is getting kicked up too. So, you know, I don't ever feel like we ended a football season or ended a semester of like, man, what did we do? Like our guys got weaker over the last couple months. And, you know, the things that attribute to that is lifting heavy and, like you said, lifting often.
Mm-hmm. What do you say, Coach Meyer?
You know, I can't really add too much to it as far as, you know, continue lifting off percentages, you know, working 75, 80, 85, you know, and then up to 90 in season, like both these guys said, you know, and it's constantly evolving. You know, I think that you have to be smart there as a strength coach and understand, you know, that this football player in November is going to be a little bit more banged up, and his 90% may not look like the basketball player that works out in the rack next to him that is getting ready to hit the season. So I think some of those things we have to take into account. I think one thing that's been really good that we do is plus sets, where when we start working off of those, you know, 80, 85, 90 percentages right there, we may only have 2, 3, 4 reps right there, but then we'll finish that last set at a plus set where, you know, you may have a kid who's feeling fresh, because again, we're dealing with teenagers, so their bodies are constantly evolving and changing. You know, he may come in there and smoke 90% of his max for 5 or 6 reps. So now you're getting that strength and power aspect of it without having to sacrifice, you know, going to these other coaches or your head football coach, you know, and them asking you, you know, why are you running these kids in the ground? My players don't have their legs up underneath them. I think that has really helped develop the strength aspect of it.
Yeah, I think so. Do you guys think, anybody can take this one, is there an order of these 6 things? Like, is there a number one that's clear, this is the most important one? Are they all pretty close? Is there an obvious least important one? Might be a slanted question. I didn't set y'all up for that one. But do you understand my question?
Yeah, I think in the context of those 6 things, and, you know, all this stuff is relative in terms of who you're training, what age group, and all that. But I think speed is definitely the most important. And, you know, for me, that's one thing that's really changed, because I was, you know, are we strong? Are we strong? Are we strong? Can we move a lot of weight? And then I started digging into some speed stuff. This guy named Dan Paff, who coaches at Altus out in I think Arizona, he coaches Olympic sprinters. And he said so many strength conditioning coaches, when they come out there to visit, they give him a PhD in the weight room and they give him an associate's degree on the track. And that really caused me to kind of look in the mirror and be like, yeah, that's me. You know, so when I started really digging into that stuff, I'm a firm believer that, you know, everybody's training nowadays. There's nobody that's, you know, nobody's doing anything magical in the weight room. It's what you're doing with your speed work, your change of direction, your plyometric stuff. That, I think, in terms of, you know, obviously assuming the kids appropriately trained long enough to be ready to do those things. But I think the speed aspect of it is the paramount piece to strength and conditioning.
What are you guys doing in speed training to Coach Wharton and Coach Myers? What's something you guys do that you like that, you can share?
Go ahead, Grant.
All right. Well, I think, as far as speed and agility, it's, are we working straight linear? Are we working lateral? Are we working change of direction? Are we working multi-directional movements? I think that stuff, you have to have a plan for it, because straight line speed, there's a place for that in all sports, but more than anything, are we training our kids to be able to plant, redirect, and accelerate as fast as they can in a short period of time right there? Can they stop on a dime, plant, redirect, and then accelerate to where they need to be? And so I think that's one thing as far as working lateral and then change of direction stuff. That's some stuff that we do that I really like.
What about you, Coach?
No, I mean, I think he's right with that. Everything's got its place, and the hard part is trying to, it's hard to work all those aspects all at the same time, and we were at Pickens, like we would work change of direction stuff one day, or we would work, straight ahead speed one day. It's hard to find time to work all those in, especially to find enough coaches to split your groups up to where, it's easy to manage those groups. But, anymore, it's like you got to look at it like this. Other than track, when are you running really 40 yards or even 30 yards straight ahead without having to change some type of direction? Game of football is not played that way. And, and then I'm going to piggyback on a conversation that Grant and I had a couple weeks ago. If you're not setting these kids up and simulating the drills like they're going to see, whether it's on the basketball court or on the football field or whatever, you're kind of setting them up to fail. Other than running maybe like a 5-yard burst, a 5-10-5, or the L drill. I like things like that, where they're having to change directions and still accelerate out of those cuts and breaks. But, if you're going out there in the day of just trying to run your 10 110s or however many 40s by the end of the summer, you got to look at, is that transitioning and going to correlate on the field or on the court or whatever sport it is you're training these kids to do. And
I think there's an element of speed training being for toughness. And if you're handling the weight room stuff right, and I'm about to ask you guys a question about that, there's not a need to do toughness there. You know what I mean? You should be
right.
No, absolutely.
So you shouldn't have to make it easy on them and then go run the piss out of them.
At some point it turns into conditioning. And I mean,
right.
That's not the nature, I don't think, of what we should be doing. Like if we're trying to train these kids to be fast and agile and explosive, going out and trying to do a certain amount of conditioning or running, if it takes you over 30 to 45 minutes, you're not working speed work. You're getting into conditioning work.
Right. We got a question. It says, do any of you guys use the conjugate method when writing your programs? If so, what benefits have you seen with multiple movements at or near their max, either 3 reps or 1 rep max?
I've never used the conjugate method. I'm not as well versed. I understand kind of the premise behind it, but I've never been brave enough to really sit down and say, all right, I'm going to take, about a 9-week or so cycle, and we're going to work in the conjugate method as opposed to traditional. So I can't say, too much on that one right there.
If somebody's a novice, explain what the conjugate makes. I don't look like a strength coach. Conjugal visit, maybe something like that. But conjugate, what's the difference in what's traditional and what's that?
I mean, it's just based off of a rep max as opposed to single, moving X amount of weight one single time.
Y'all got anything to add to that for Coach?
The conjugate method really, that became popular with Louis Simmons and the Westside Barbell crew. a few years ago, and it's conjugate is essentially, you have your dynamic effort days, you have your max effort days, and it's just a style of training. It's not good or bad. It all depends on where it fits with what your philosophy is in the weight room. Like for us, I've used it before, but we don't use that just because of the type of athletes that I have, in terms of the guys that, we have every kid that comes in my weight room is a 2 or 3 sport kid. So it just doesn't really fit right now what I have, but it's all just, conjugate versus concurrent. That's the thing in strength conditioning is it gets very semantical.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of fancy words. I used to go when I was young and I was assistant coach. I worked with Sid Maxwell. We'd go to these conferences and I was completely lost about 99% of the time, just in full disclosure. I never seen people that usually looked like it was all about just lifting and running and stuff that was simple, making something really hard with a lot of words. Yep. People do it on offense and defense too. But the key, I think, is being able to put all this stuff together in some kind of a program. There are people out there that sell these programs. There's people that come up with a lot of different things. But what are you guys doing to work on bending and flexibility? Who wants to take that one? Bending and flexibility.
I mean, I'll start off. I mean, I think the obvious thing that we would all probably agree on is, starting every workout with some type of a warm-up. The days of just doing the static stretching there's a lot of articles and science behind why you shouldn't do that, but kind of mimicking or simulating the movements you're fixing to do, so we'll start every day with some type of dynamic warm-up. We've gotten to the point where if we're doing squats of some kind, we'll do like tuck jumps or some type of explosive jump before we start in the rack, and then finishing with obviously a daily stretch. It's a lot of the same stuff we did at Pickens, but there is something to be said. If you're not stretching, you're not getting more flexible.
Right.
Bottom line, you can lift all the weights you want to lift, but the tighter that kid gets, the risk of that injury is going up, and you're fixing to have something bad happen there. So you got to make time to get the stretching in.
Yeah, I think that's something we probably struggle with. I think it's something everybody struggles with, trying to get all this stuff in the limited amount of time you got. I think everybody's bench squatting, cleaning, some kind of auxiliary lift and some kind of speed training, but you got to find time to bend, flexibility, whatever. I want to get on to this next thing because I feel like this is something we can use for maybe the crowd like me that doesn't understand every word about strength conditioning, just knows it's really, really important. I use this slide. You guys work with me. Y'all heard me say this because Sid taught us this back in the day when I was first starting to coach. And back then we were really good at strength conditioning and not many people were. It wasn't anything I did. It was Sid that was good at it. And it gave us this huge advantage. And then over the years, that advantage kind of got less and less because everybody's training. But I always believed when he would say this, and I took it and I used it every year I was a coach, that because kids always come up to you and they say, Coach, what can I do to get better? Is that not a standard kid line? They're not getting to play. They don't want to sound like they're complaining about playing time. So they come in with the line, what can I do to get better? And the answer is you worry about stuff you can control. You may be the third best, left tackle. You just got to be the third best left tackle. But are you doing everything you can do to get better and be the second best one or whatever? So I always use these lines and it fit into the training program, not into the football side. It was, are you doing these 3 things? Are you doing everything in the weight room with intensity? Are you taking care of yourself, from a nutrition standpoint? And are you getting rest? Everybody that's on here is on Twitter and they see the thousands of tweets people put out there about how more injury prone you are from not sleeping and things like that. So I really believe that if you want to maximize your ability to be successful, especially a high school athlete, you had to master these 3 things. So my question for you guys, and I'll start with Coach Myers, what are you all doing to help foster these things? You can pick one of them or all of them.
Well, just starting off, with the first one, intensity there, I don't know where I got this. I didn't come up with it myself, but as a strength coach, you've got to be the thermostat and not the thermometer of the room. Like, you set the climate, you set the temperature. You don't just read it and say, oh man, these kids don't want to work today. That horse doesn't want to plow. You've got to set the climate. Kids want to follow somebody. Okay, so if you come in there with proper level of enthusiasm, intensity, energy, whatever buzzword you want to use right there, kids will follow. You'll have, 30-40% of them jump right on board. You'll have another 20 or so percent that are kind of in, between right there that you have to get them to come on. And then there's always going to be, in a high school weight room, whether you've got sport specific, whether you've got mixed gender, whether it's, however it's grouped, there's always going to be a group of kids that are not fully on board with what you're doing. And now you have to find a way to meet those kids where they're at, meet their coaches where they're at, and get them up to your level of intensity. And as far as the nutrition goes, it's just like a car. If you're not putting gas in it, it's not going to run. In regeneration, I can't really go any further than what you just said. If you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not getting enough rest, you're not going to recover, and your body's going to suffer from it.
And this goes back to something I do know about, which is building relationships with kids. But if those kids, when they're not with you, are not eating correctly, or if they're not going to bed and sleeping, then they're just not, they don't need to come in the office and talk about why they're not getting play. That's all I'm saying. If they're not going to do stuff, then they really just don't need to. So we preach this all the time. You guys heard it. And of course, I'm sure about 10% of them listened, but they heard it. They knew that, they knew better than that. Coach Wharton, what do you guys do to foster these things? You, like I said, pick one or pick all of them.
I'll pick on nutrition right now. One of the fortunate things that we're able to do, our booster club and Coach Saunders believes in getting these kids extra nutrition. And we've been fortunate that of working with a couple food banks throughout the state where somebody will go pick up a truckload of stuff and come back, and it's usually some type of Gatorade, protein drinks or bars, the Gatorade Chews, you name it, Propel water. And so, we're fortunate enough that as soon as class ends and the workout's over, these kids are getting that stuff as they're going out the door to the next class. On top of that, last summer, they did the same thing, that Pickens did a few years ago when they started that grant program through the summer where they're feeding the kids. And so we start a little later in the summer. We start about 9 o'clock, but we get our kids there early enough to eat breakfast and also go back and eat lunch after that. And honestly, just the dynamics of the two places and I can only speak on these two communities being so close together. There's probably a few more kids up there that, if they don't eat there with you, they're not going to eat. The big thing is you don't know what they're going home to. And I think you already said it, that if they're not with you, you don't get to really control that. And so that's just kind of one aspect that I can't say it's been a huge help for us, but I do think it helped us a lot down the stretch as far as making sure our kids had extra stuff to eat. And I could even say during football season, same thing after practice, it was, hey guys, go in there and get you something, get a drink, get a bar before you go home.
I got it. Ely, what'd you say?
I think one of the things about intensity that is new to me and it's kind of revolutionized how I think of stuff is I'm one of those to be able to go in and, train kids and help them, with what we're doing in the weight room. But I think the key to intensity is the first 15 to 20 minutes of your session. I think when I look back is how I've programmed and planned out what we're going to do when is that 15 to 20 minutes when you get started is so important to foster the sense of intensity that you want for the entire session. And kind of what I mean by that is if you're, even like for us, and, we do stuff a little outside the box, a little different. I mean, our very first thing we do is speed work. we hit our speed improvement drills, we hit our acceleration work, our top end work, whatever we're doing for that specific day, we hit that. And then we go through like an 8-minute warm up to prep us for the lift. And then we're in the weight room lifting. And that sets the tone for the rest of the session. And I think that's kind of like the golden nugget for the intensity aspect of it is what are you doing right there at the beginning? Are you one of those coaches that just kind of rolls out of the office and blows the whistle and your kids are disciplined, everybody lines up, but then you kind of just roll into your knee hugs and your lunges and your this and that. And then 10 minutes later, yeah, the kids are warmed up, but are they really ready to go? And I think that 15 to 20 minute initial block of the training session is so important to set the tone for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you guys all did a great job of these things. Next question. Intangibles gained in strength conditioning. Now, this is a real, detailed slide here. You guys don't be stealing this. But I really believe that the whole program should be designed to build these 4 things and not individual aspects of it. I gave this away earlier. I wouldn't go out, I wouldn't make lifting really easy on them or work with them and be really nice and then go out and run over and back till they, couldn't run anymore. There has to be a sense of the whole training helps toughness. It helps enthusiasm, discipline, leadership. I am really, and I don't mind if we spend the rest of our time on this slide because I really think this is a way we can help people. There's a lot of different strength programs. Pick your one, go off of it if you understand periodization or you don't. There's somebody that can help you with that. But I'm telling you, in 2020, kids are not going to develop these things at home always. They're not going to develop them in the classroom. And this is the part coaches don't love. They're probably not going to develop them at your practice. So, it's not going to be super tough. You're going to have to work with them. There's not always kids just naturally building leadership at your practice. Now, some of that will come out of practice. I don't mean to insult anybody. But in my opinion, more can come out of the weight room. You can build more toughness in the weight room than you can at practice. You can build more enthusiasm in the weight room than you can at practice. More discipline and more leadership. So talk about those things, and we'll start with Coach Wharton. Talk a little bit about those things. And, you can argue with me if you think I'm missing one or I got one too high or whatever. But what are some intangibles that you see and then how can we develop them?
To me, I think everything starts, I would say, with enthusiasm and discipline. The enthusiasm, Coach Myers already touched on, has got to come from the coach. If you walk in and you're just kind of if you're all up in your feelings, as a term kids say now, or whatever's going on, you've got to bring the excitement and the energy. And it's hard, but if you walk in there, I think, and you're just kind of down in the dumps, the kids are going to feed off of that. If you come in and you're kind of high enthusiasm, the kids will feed off of that. But the next thing is discipline. I think that toughness is developed through discipline. I think we've all got kids that everybody does every program where a kid's going to cut reps. The workout sheet could say do a set of 5 and that kid's going to do 3. You could have it where it says do a set of 3 and the kid's going to do 1. If you can get them to start to being disciplined, being on time, doing what they're supposed to do the workout how you want them, and try to do it the best they can, I think through that they start to develop toughness. And then also through that, I think you can find your leaders and your leadership through the kids who are a little bit more disciplined than the other ones. And sometimes you got to find a kid that it may just not be their thing to be a leader, but try to approach them in a way and get them to start doing certain things. We still call off and sound off our big sets. When, we do something a little different than we did at Pickens with that. But sometimes finding a kid to just call off the workout for that set or for that day. Another one is leading the stretches, and something that has been a good thing for me to see, especially since the 2019 season ended and until this unfortunate break, was some of our younger guys are going to be seniors, starting to take some ownership roles in the weight room. I wasn't having to be the guy to get on kids for certain little things. And that varies from class to class. But, I think for me personally, I think everything starts with those two things, enthusiasm and discipline, and then toughness and leadership fall in line with that.
Coach Ely, what do you guys do to foster some of these things? I know you want them. I've worked with you. What are some things you guys do that you say, I think this really helped us in one of these?
It's one of those things that really, if you've got a structured, organized, laid out strength and conditioning plan and you execute that plan like it should be executed, you're gonna check those boxes. One of the things I really can hit on is, the enthusiasm part of it. And, we can all preach till we're blue in the face and use a bunch of big fancy scientific words of why kids need strength and conditioning. But the key is can you get them excited to train? And one of the things we do is we just call them priming videos, to where, like, if we got a heavy back squat, that's the first thing we're doing in the weight room that day. Well, we've got 2 monitors up in our weight room, and I'll throw up like world's strongest man back squats, or Ronnie Coleman back squatting like 800 pounds, or just something like that. And some of the kids giggle, but just kind of priming them mentally for the physical work they've got to do. And one of the things we do for enthusiasm is we have a theme of the week every Monday in the weight room. And I'd like to tell you that it's logical and planned out, but most of the time it's just whatever I come up with over the weekend. Like, one of them was, you've got to train like the building's on fire and you're trying to get out. So I went running around the weight room with a fire extinguisher one day, and all of a sudden the kids started working. I mean, just kind of crazy, off the wall, PJ Fleck type stuff like that is really what, gets the kids' attention. Because the kids we've got today, I mean, they see something and then 10 minutes later it's gone and they're on to the next thing, in terms of how the access to social media and the information they're getting. So you've got you're not just going to give them this rah-rah soapbox speech at the beginning of a training session and expect it to last for the 60, 90, 120 minutes you've got them. You've got to kind of reboot that every few minutes to keep them engaged and keep them enthusiastic during the training.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What do you say, Coach Myers?
I think all 4 of these obviously are very important intangibles, but I think there's a 5th that I would put in here also that ties all 4 of them in together, and that's accountability. When you start having kids hold each other accountable, because that's going to develop more toughness right now. It's not very easy to tell your buddy, to tell your friend to get back under the bar and get that last rep like Adam was talking about. It's also going to foster some enthusiasm right there, where kids are encouraging each other. One more rep, pushing yourself past the point, not of exhaustion, but of what in your mind you think is exhaustion. Discipline, accountability is holding each other to a certain level of discipline to do something that you don't necessarily want to do. And then the leadership aspect of it. So I think that would be a 5th thing that I put there. And, I've worked 8 years at Spalding High School with Nick Davis, and I don't think that, I could name another person that did a better job of teaching accountability to their kids and why it's important, and then the kids buying into that aspect of accountability, and then being able to foster each one of these intangibles from it. So I think that's one thing that would tie into all 4 of those as well.
Yeah, I agree. So each of you guys found yourself as a new coach one day, and you all probably worked really hard. I know all of you, so I know you did, and somehow found your way in the weight room. What advice do you have for somebody that aspires to be a strength coach? I think the new strength coaches, you're seeing more and more of them. This has popped up by social media and all. But what advice do you have for somebody that's new, that's watching this, that's maybe learning, that aspires to be the head strength coach at a school like each of you are right now? Coach Ely.
I would say that the first thing, obviously, is get to know your kids. I mean, don't just roll into the weight room, blowing a whistle, yelling out first man, first set, and, expect the kids just to jump on board because you're the strength coach. Spend that time to invest in your kids' lives in the weight room and out of the weight room. And then the second thing I would say is, I've been doing this 12 years and, I'd like to think I've, learned a lot and grown and researched and dug in, but there's really been two resources that have kind of wholesale influenced me in the weight room. And to a young strength coach, I would say buy Jim Wendler's 531 program book. And then I would buy Joe Ken's tier system book, the strength coach's playbook or something like that. You buy those two books, read them, do exactly what's in both of them, and you're going to be a good strength coach. It's really not that hard. There's still aspects of both of those sprinkled in what I do now. And, I would just say, don't try to reinvent the wheel. One of the things that, when people ask me for my workout programs and stuff like that is when I send them stuff, it's funny because the stuff I sent them from 8, 9, 10 years ago versus the stuff I send them now, you would think they were flipped. You would think that the new fancy stuff I'm doing that I was trying to do back then is totally different. If people come watch us train and they look at what we do, we don't do a lot of stuff. And, we just, the one kind of hallmark I preach to our kids is we want to do quality work quickly. And that's really what we base everything in the weight room, philosophy-wise, off what we do in terms of training.
Coach Wharton, what do you say? What advice you got for the young buck?
Well, I would say you better enjoy it and better love it if you're fixing to walk in that weight room and want those kids to believe you. And I think that's one thing I was fortunate of, and I think all the other two guys on here still like to train, obviously. But I would say that for one. Second thing I would touch on, Jim Wendler's program that he talked about is fantastic. Though that is one of the first parts of a program that I used when I started years ago, and like Ely still use today, certain parts of that. So the next thing I would say, don't feel like you've got it all figured out. Keep researching, keep watching videos from trusted sources, keep reading articles. Just like football, you got to always be trying to better yourself in this profession, because if you're not, you're really doing a disservice to the kids, I think. And then don't be afraid to go get some type of certification on it. I think personally for me, when I went and got my USAW, that was one of the best things that has helped me out. And, I'm real quick to tell people I think it's something you should do. It's a great hands-on experience. You're not just walking in and regurgitating information. They put you through the ropes and make you have to teach the lift. They make you do the lifts yourself and actually have to teach complete strangers. And, I would say the state of Georgia's got some really good guys teaching that with Coach Stockel and Coach Luttrell. So don't be afraid to look into one of those or look into getting your CSCS done. But I think it's only going to help you be a better coach.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Coach Myers? What advice you got?
The biggest thing, man, is, ask questions. Reach out to other coaches and people that you trust and develop a circle and ask questions and bounce ideas off of each other. I went through that long diatribe of names earlier at the start. Outside of a few guys that I played football with in college there, I met all of these guys through different strength clinics, strength associations, stuff like that. And they helped me be a better coach. So that's my biggest piece of advice, is go out there and find guys that you trust to be able to get better with. I think that's really pivotal in developing.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. Tell the people where they can find you if they got a question. Ely, tell them where they can find you on social media. They got a question.
You might look up my wife if you want to find me on social media.
If you want to find Ely, you got to get his rotary phone number.
That's right.
Call the house phone, ask if you can speak to Matt.
That's right. We actually one of those old school, the shared lines where you got like 3 houses sharing one line.
Soup can on a string.
That's right. If people want to get a hold of me, just my email, my personal email, matt.ely64@gmail.com. And, that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. I had to forego, like I said, the Twitter and the Facebook, just because they were just such time bandits for me. But yeah, best way to get a hold of me, and funny saying this, the best way to get a hold of me is just old school email nowadays.
There you go. Coach Wharton, tell people where they can find you if they got a question.
I'm on Twitter. My personal email or personal Twitter is @A Spence Wharton, SPENCE WHARTON. I've also got a Gilmer Strength Twitter, and that is @Gilmer Bobcat.
Coach Myers?
@Grant Myers 44 is my personal Twitter handle there, or you can follow the Pickens High School Strength program at Dragons Iron.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys joining me. You can't, strength conditioning is such a vast subject. You can't cover too much in an hour, but nevertheless, we gotten started, and looking forward to having you guys. We'll see if we can lock Ely down. He can fire up his computer and join the rest of the technology world sometime with us. But appreciate you guys, and genuinely appreciate all y'all done working with me. But I hope we can help some people and, just keep growing. So thanks a lot, guys.
Definitely.
Thanks for having us.
Enjoyed it.
Absolutely.